Hi everyone, we're going to get started with today's topic, which is approaches to digital transformation. We're going to be sharing survey results and insights from companies investing in digital transformation efforts within their organization. We're pleased to have two presenters with us today. One, Mark Lister, Chief Digital Officer at Ness Digital Engineering. As Chief Digital Officer, Mark promotes strategies that really utilize the strength of Ness's user experience and design thinking approach. And secondly, we're pleased to have Doug Barth with us from GatePoint Research. Doug has been involved with business-to-business direct marketing for over 20 years and brings a wealth of knowledge to the table for today's discussion. So Doug, Mark, welcome to today's session, and I'd like to turn the floor over to Doug to get started.
Thank you, Sarah. Let me talk a little bit about how we conducted this survey. We did this starting almost a year ago. Between December of 2018 and May of this year, GatePoint Research invited executives to participate in a survey. The theme of the survey was strategic approaches to digital business and technology projects. We got 52 executives to participate and weigh in with their opinions. And we got a real good overview from senior level executives. All of those who took the survey held the title of director or higher. In fact, as you can see, 65% of the responders held the title at the director level, 21% at the VP, and 14% were actually C-level executives. And everyone took the survey voluntarily, and this was an online survey that they were invited to participate by going to a survey website. Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Doug.
Perhaps you'd like to tell us a little more about who took the survey.
Yeah, I think the way to sort of pinpoint who they were and who we were looking to find were people making buying decisions, I think, around technology and the digital transformation within. I mean, I know this is all aggregate feedback. We did get some interesting points of view from individuals. I think, you know, interesting job titles that you could bear in mind when you're listening to this. We had Chief Product Officers, SVP of Business Analytics, Senior VP of Engagement and Digital Transformation, those kind of job titles. Yeah, we got the likes of Microsoft, Comcast, Ford, those type of businesses for a little bit of background context. You know, I think it's worth hearing what some of these people had to say in the aggregate in these feedback. And then I'll just move forward a little bit to just tell you the theory that we were trying to validate here. You know, I'm speaking to you from Ness. We're a services business. We provide digital transformation services and design and technology and data. Those are our specialist areas. We have belief and anecdotal evidence we hear from customers about what's on screen there, how they're trying to become truly customer centric, build connected digital experiences. But we just wanted to put it out there and ask some of these questions you see on screen. How are they going about it? How are they doing it? A kind of impartial version that didn't involve what we'd heard from people in the market. And my kind of loose summary about what you're going to hear here as we drill into it. All of these decision makers face choices around buying or building solutions, around doing it in-house or finding partners. They're all trying within the tenure of their own jobs to move the needle with speed to market, you know, increasing efficiency and growing their business. I mean, how do they do it? How do they prioritize it? What are the biggest issues they're faced with? We wanted to find out some of that and share the findings with you, and that's how we go about it. So let's dig in, and Doug's going to introduce each question, the answers, and I'm going to give a few thoughts on what we made of it. So let's go, Doug.
Good deal, Mark. Thank you. So the first question that we asked these executives, do you have transformational digital business or technology projects planned in any of the following areas for 2019? Again, remember, we executed the survey very early in the year. And of the projects that they were planning to execute, the most popular theme of a transformation project, 58% said big data analytics, machine learning, and AI was the subject of their digital transformation project they were planning. Right behind that, at 52%, customer experience and user experience design. And then next, 46% said that they were planning application modernization transformation projects. And you can see how the answers scattered across some of the other subject areas here.
Yeah, so what I'd like to do maybe is kind of throw a blanket over those top three, and I see them incredibly closely related to each other. We have a business development team in North America and the US, sorry, and Europe, and we see this all the time. And the thread I would draw together, I mean, maybe I'll finish on why big data is right at the top of it and why people think that's the way to do it, but I look at them in concert. Anyone with an online presence, let's just think about those kind of businesses, are trying to get a better customer experience, right? Trying to help their customers solve problems, get answers quicker, self-serve, problem solve, customer service issues. And they do that through kind of personalized portals, tracking accounts and spend and loyalty. Behind the scenes, of course, to those portals, there may well and inevitably have been a modernization exercise to get emerging and latest technologies to do that seamlessly, to carve related data out of silos that have been historic, to make it all talk and interoperable. Doing that on a massive scale is of course where big data plays its part, where the analysis, the machine learning and automation of learning to keep improving that customer experience and kind of in real time as far as possible make the experience better from what's happening in the way people are interacting with your enterprise software. That's where I see the three of them together. I use a phrase a lot, which I think applies here: extreme personalization. I think it's driving a lot of this. Every business is trying to make themselves more useful to the audience of one, to me. I will pay, I will stay, I will recommend a friend if you keep giving me useful, seamless, quick answers. I think that's related to continuous innovation, never stopping in that approach, being an open-minded business, a listening business, building for ongoing change, consistently trying to improve your experience. You keep learning from the data, what's working, what can we do better, and what new features are revealed by usage patterns that will help people come to us where they may have chosen another, a choice out there in the market. So I see those three things together. Shall we do another one, Doug?
Thank you, Mark. So we wanted to dig a little bit behind those digital transformation projects. So we asked, what are the top business drivers for your projects in this area? And maybe not a surprise, it's a ubiquitous answer we see a lot. 68% said reducing costs, or it's the flip side of that, increasing operational efficiency was driving the digital transformation projects. Fully 60% said increasing revenue, also a very popular driver or motivator, and 50% said engaging customers. This is the big data and customization you were talking about, Mark. Does this track what you're saying?
It does. I think it's interesting times that, increasing revenue is not the top. Maybe it's a sign of the times, a sign of the promise of the internet, that margins are being squeezed to such a degree in areas like telco and retail, that using technology to be as lean and mean and operationally efficient as possible is kind of driving a lot of behaviors. We definitely see a lot of RPA inquiries there. How can I remove redundancy, break down silos, tidy data, remove duplication? Because I know as a buyer that there's technology can definitely help me do it better than I'm doing it today. So a sign of the times that one in particular is at the top of it. But I see, once again, those followed closely by the other two, that customer engagement. I think I'm developing a theme here. Getting good at that experience, sign up once, sign up forever, personalize as quickly as possible, know my previous behavior, and crucially, in that engagement, maybe somewhere down the line, about differentiating us with insights and maybe next best actions that the company's recommending to me. That might be, healthcare and financial services, other people who like this, and they're like you because we're good at segmenting. Energy optimization to reduce bills. There's a whole thing about customers themselves, squeezing margin out of the fat profits people used to make. But this is the new reality. And all of these kind of offerings that people are, launching are creating more engaged customers. Of course, there's more choice than ever, but people are kind of overwhelmed by choice. So as long as you keep feeding their behaviors that they perceive that things are useful and are delivering value to them, they're going to stick with you. Better organized, more easy to access data that's integrated and interoperable between an ever expanding range of data sets, you know, which of course now is event data and weather data and events that unrelated to the company data, but in tandem creating volume. I think that's the new norm. And once you've got that ticking along, that's leading you to new service channels and digital propositions opening up down the bottom there, you know, new markets. Now, they might be in new geographies, but they might be new markets in the market I'm sitting in geographically. It's just finding new ways to encroach into somewhere I'd not been before because I found evidence that it's a good idea in the data. So there's a little commentary on that one. Let's have another one.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. That's actually fascinating. So on this next slide, we wanted to maybe hear a little bit about what the personal motivators might be. So we asked, how concerned is your organization about staying competitive given the current pace of digital disruption? And I'm going to speak a little bit about the 21 years of doing surveys and my experience and how I interpret this chart. We see that there's a lot of concern out there. Fully a quarter of our respondents voted their level of concern as a 5 on a scale of 5, and then another 42% gave it a 4 on a scale of 5. This is really screaming to us that there is a huge amount of concern out there, and it's probably even higher than this because a lot of executives aren't going to reveal what they think might be weakness by talking about how concerned they are. But this is a very unambiguous revelation about the level of tension that's out there about staying competitive and staying on top of these trends.
Yeah, I mean, let me just kind of concur and build on that. I mean, I kind of found it amazing that there's what 14% that are giving us the kind of we're all good, everything's fine here, we're not concerned at all. I find that a little bit amazing. I mean, no one's going to be outed here, of course, but I feel they might be setting themselves up for a fall there because you know, evidence is around us all the time in recent IPOs that maybe we're all set to go gangbusters one day and then 2 months later not so much. The constant change in dynamic markets and ideas from China, things are happening fast, and you can't like stop listening and stop reading the what's coming. So I don't know, that does sound a little bit strange, I think, but of course it's behind the curtain of a survey. And as you said, I think it would have been maybe a bit odd if people had revealed they were 5 out of 5 worried, because that doesn't really portray them in such a good light, does it? About being I mean, terrified maybe, but you know, 66% I think I read there are people that are, I'd say, healthily, you know, worried that things are not going to be the same for years on end, and careers are different. There's no jobs for life. You've got to keep listening, keep innovating, not get too big-headed. I mean, maybe there's a lesson to learn there in the similar story with both Amazon and Alibaba, that they've got that 100-year startup mentality. I think probably a good approach to learn how to stay hungry and to try and build that constant improvement mentality within your organizations, and experiment and try things out, find ways to experiment healthily, and not, I guess part of that is not staying devoted to your maybe single cash cow. Lots of companies have come a cropper where they've not managed to, you know, diversify their own revenue streams from the thing that was really solid and hot one day, and yet from the outside might look ripe for innovation. So and I think of these companies, maybe we'll come on to it a little bit as we conclude up here, that they need to be listening to their audiences to develop their next incarnation as a digital leader, but they also need to be looking out for inspiration around the market and finding, as I said earlier, adjacent data sets that could make their own proposition more valuable. So they just need to be in a proactive listening mode all the time, I think, to stay relevant. And it's a kind of an external outlook beyond what's going on in my single company, to be aware of the changing, you know, the dynamic market where they've got to keep up to stay still, so to speak. So very interesting and telltale one, I agree. Just to let everyone know, I think we've got 2 more, and then we've got a little bit of conclusion. So hang in there, because hopefully it builds up to a kind of a body of pointing in a couple of directions, the conclusions that we're drawing here. So the penultimate one, I believe, Doug.
Thank you, Mark. So we were going to maybe reveal all of the various anxieties these executives must be feeling. We asked them, what challenges have you experienced in the past with transformation, digital business, and technology projects? Maybe not a surprise, but leading the pack of defining their challenges was a fear of scope creep and cost overruns. 52% claim that. 42% said that they lacked, perhaps on their staff, the needed expertise to manage these projects. And another 42% had anxiety about change management and employee adoption of these new technologies. So this makes sense on the broader anxiety about digital transformation projects, Mark?
Yeah, interesting one, this, because I think of it in a couple of ways. How it affects really big companies and then smaller kind of challenger ones is one dimension, and then some of these concerns about just internal politics of doing things, or maybe relationship with partners. Let's just start on the sizing one. Big companies, you know, we know them to be slower moving for obvious reasons, really. A bigger ship takes long to turn and all that. You'd like to think that the hunger to be that 100-year startup means, you know, teams coalesce and point in the right direction, rather than point thinkers get involved in the blame game and never actually tackle the core issue. Definitely something I've seen played out in the last 10 years of my career. So let's just look at it from that angle, I guess. That top one there about, it's a little bit fearful, isn't it? A bit, I'm worried about scope creep and cost overrun because that's happened before, rather than, you know, getting to the plan and launching something that's going to change our fortunes, because we must, you know, it seems like a very pragmatic way to look at something, which I hope is truly transformative. To me, it speaks to ways to build that team and that collaborative spirit about, and I think they're kind of sub bullets to what is digital transformation, right? The age of social media and dialogue using digital technologies should, I hope, incubate like openness, honesty, transparency, trust, the metrics, the dashboards that show what I contributed, where we got up to, whose job that was. It should, when done correctly, cut through some of that. And if that, you know, the internal issues there about worries about internal skills, experience, and communication skills, these kind of, we can't do it because we don't have the skills. Well, what are we going to do about that? Do we hire them? Do we partner with people? We got to get these stuff done, because being transformed digitally and shaping up our digital proposition is actually bigger than all of us. How do we go about it? What are we going to do? And how do we kind of build some energy around that? My second perspective there, if this is about an external relationship rather than internal limitations, there are similar issues, I guess, with external partners, but also setting up initially when you put in place a contract between you. You know, we're two businesses, we're going to complement each other's skills. We can do something you can't, you can do something we can't. There has to be a governance about that, and definitely in a world that I'm used to of kind of globally distributed agile, the construct of a 2-week sprint and a ceremony to show progress should be built into that governance, that here's what we said we were going to do, here's what we did in those 2 weeks, you know, iterations. We can argue about things that didn't happen in 2 weeks, but let's definitely not wait a year or a year and a half before everything blows up and we get really upset with each other. Let's keep each other honest. Let's stick to being on the line and giving genuine feedback as we agreed in our content, and let's both commit to this relationship to make it work. You know, that's another thing about honesty and speaking up, you know, in a friendly yet challenging and professional manner. A little bit more, I think, on, you know, the culture, change management, adoption, rollout. Once again, the practical matters, but hiring and training expertise. I mean, I'll go data and machine learning, definitely a hot topic, right? Everyone trying to set themselves up to do that internally, and on core skills, maybe they can, but maybe they're not a business that hires the best talent in machine learning to be able to do it, even though they wish they could. So maybe they need to partner with a company that has machine learning capabilities and solutions that are kind of ready to go. Maybe that'll accelerate their time to market. Maybe that'll help them achieve something and build that internal adoption and employee adoption, that this is the right track. And maybe then they could become more attractive to hiring that talent and start doing some of it internally. There's a range of options, back to what I said at the start, build or buy or internal or partner. they're all fed into this thing. Yeah, I believe somewhere along the line, maybe we have 100 clients. Every time we're working with a business which is one business, they've got to step outside a little bit, head above the parapet, and meet companies like us. Might not be us, of course, but we bring the benefit of those relationships to some of these modern ubiquitous problems, you know, monetizing data, organizing data, personalizing data. They could definitely learn from occasional forays and partnerships to try and inject some new ways of thinking about things into their business. So maybe that's long enough on that one. And then I think our last one here, Doug.
Yeah, let's drill into the fact that there are solutions out there. So we asked these executives, if you were to engage with a strategic partner, what are the most important qualities that you'd look for? And obviously, you're looking for someone smarter than you. 62% said they're looking for innovative thinking and flexibility with their partner. And as you just mentioned, experience is a big one. It's one of the key reasons you go to an outside resource. Experience with the problem. And understand the opportunities that they needed to address with their digital transformation projects. And 52% said they were looking for a very agile and collaborative partnership model. Could you speak about this, Mark?
Yeah, innovative thinking. I like that concept. The thinking part of it. A lot. What was the question? Sort of is putting this concept of you're looking for a partner, and I'm saying implied in that strategic partner is to come along, tie up with you, and deliver something of real commercial value to you. And I think that's related to some kind of gap that you must acknowledge to be even thinking about that, right? And that gap, it might be a thinking gap, it might be a skills gap, an experience gap. A lot of conversations I'm having these days with some of the bigger companies relate to we've become a big company from being a product company. We built a thing and sent people used to buy it and spend a lot of money on it, like, you know, like an automobile, for instance. But in the age of the renting economy, the sharing economy, every other kind of economy you could think of, the narrative is changing there. People still want to drive cars, but they have an infinite amount of, well, obviously not infinite, but a much bigger range of choices to get from A to B than they had 40 years ago. And those companies who are still in the lead, they're still the big dogs, they still have the revenues, the trust, the brand name, they're having to think differently. And I'm not picking on automotive here, it's the same with oil and gas and energy and retail and medical drugs companies. They've got to think in shorter timelines. They've got to pander to their customers who like to maybe buy things, you know, in a pre-agreed, like you buy a mobile phone, right? A subscription for 2 years where you understand the payments coming every month, but there's no initial outlay. And that's just not a business model transformation. That's a complete way of thinking differently. And then companies are looking for help to how to think differently, how to be that company, how to offer incremental value, how to not go for the Titanic brand launch anymore, because sometimes it's just out of keeping. It's that incremental continuous innovation again. We get to talk to a lot of interesting companies, I think, looking at those top 3 things. Once again, it's that 10-year thing, right? Oil and gas and automotive, was it 10, 15 years to do something worthwhile in the old days, but they're having to deliver value in stuff that, 12 to 18 months. And it's just not a comfortable thing for them to do. So doing soft rollouts, doing proof of concepts, doing things in certain countries, taking feedback, ingesting, crowdsourcing ideas. They need help a little bit with doing this because it's just not natural to a lot of these companies. So no surprise, I think, in the looking for an outside thought process and maybe a different model for billing and charging and looking at outcomes and outputs, and we'll reward you, we gain and you gain, and let's align our incentives. I think also looking for partners that can take something akin to a brief or a problem statement and really kind of kick it around and stretch it and come back with some different thinking entirely. Maybe some adjacent thinking, maybe breaking it up into pieces, but also maybe joining the dots to a different business problem that's been solved in some other industry and saying, hey, how about trying this out in your industry? Because it hasn't been done before and there's no reason not to. I minded occasionally, I often upset people when trying to change their mindsets, but some telcos I spoke to recently, when they're like adamant that woe, you know, the end is nigh almost, because the investment costs are so high, and people that we all know, like, well, even here on this webcast, go to webinar, right? But Zoom and Google's communication services, they all sit on top of telco provided connectivity. But the telco has to adjust to that. They've got to think differently. They've got to become that short turnaround company. They just have to. And they're looking for that outside thinking, which sometimes is unrelated to telco, about how you might build a, you know, workplace as a service, something like that. Financial services is another one. To some people, and not everyone, and anyone that's on from financial service industry, full respect to the history, the legacy, the trust, all of those things that we think of as integral to brands. But some people, you know, investing their discretionary spend is something they consider doing when they might choose to go to the gym or go on holiday. It's just a discretionary spend. Some people's eyes, financial services is a retailer of some description, because I spend money with them. So what could they learn from retailers, or the way retail is behaving? You know, whether that's Amazon e-commerce, whether that's TJ Maxx, TJX in retail, all kinds of lessons can be learned once you open your mind. And it could be these strategic partners that help you, you know, move out of those institutional boundaries in the way you think. I think many companies with engagements in other areas thinking differently, that's what's innovative thinking. And I think the winner there is the companies that can communicate lessons they've learned, business value that they can share, but, you know, potholes to avoid in the road, right? Lessons that mean don't do this mistake, because we've done it a few times. And that's part of that honesty and grown up dialogue of the digital age. I mean, these are high value partnership kind of models, where if I'm saving you a year wasted in the wrong direction because it didn't work in some way you hadn't looked before, then that's valuable. And I think this strategic partnership is the way that, well, any number of brands are trying it out in any number of different models. But to step up to be that valuable strategic partner, you've got to understand and empathize with their problem statement, and not be the person just responding to the initial brief, but, you know, stretch it, challenge it, question it, and add value by having a thoughtful discussion about it. I went on a little bit there, didn't I? But I kind of found my mojo, so I'm very passionate in this area.
Passion's good, Mark.
Thank you. Right, so we've hit the half hour, which is where we wanted to finish here. I just wanted to thank everyone for attending. We're just going to leave a little moment hanging, I guess. I just put this final thought, just to explain who Ness are. I'm not going to walk through it. We are a company. We do services, but we're exposed to a lot of these businesses and a lot of these digital transformation challenges, primarily in North America and Europe, as I said. Sarah, have you got any questions that have come in from the audience? Maybe we could move on.
We sure do. Thank you both to Doug and Mark for great information this past half hour. Mark, we do have a couple questions from the audience for you. So we'll start with one and see if time permits for the second. So the first question, is data the savior of all these businesses? And what do you think does a really good job of or who do you think does a really good job of using it to differentiate their business?
Okay, there's sort of two parts there, aren't there? My background is actually like experience design and customer experience, but increasingly over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been drawn to, yes, it is data. Customer experience can only be delivered on a really kind of on-point data strategy, a listening data strategy, seamless, hooked into emerging technologies, and real-time and listening and offering up insights, right? Obviously a blend between the human expert and the you know, automation that we all know. So I'd agree that data is the savior here. If you listen to it, it tells you things. A business that I think is doing it really well, and of course, not being aware of my audience, let me try and I'll think of one that cuts across. Let's go with Netflix, shall we? Because I love the undulations of their story of the past 15 years. I mean, I'm old enough to remember how it all started, posting DVDs to people's homes. But I think they made a few brave bets on data, and it seems to have paid off, and yet it's still not certain that they'll win in the end. So that House of Cards story, when they went with their first big, you know, homegrown production, they studied massively the data, the insights of audience behaviors of what sort of show people would buy into. They seem to have got that one right, because it did accelerate their growth and promote their brand. So that was there. They were first to market with the model, I think, so they gobbled up the cord cutters I mean, I don't know which country you're in, but you know, $150 a month to $10 or $15 a month sounded great when you started, although now you started adding your $15 a month to like 6 different providers, it started to get parity, isn't it? So they got close to that sort of monopoly, I feel, a year or two ago. But you know, Amazon Prime came along, and now Disney and Apple have thrown their hat into the ring. So the monopoly bit's going to go. We are, I guess, the audience is breaking up a little bit again. So they got close to monopoly type behavior and put their prices up, didn't they? They started recruiting Hollywood talent on screen, and I think that kind of big business of movie production and big shows and, you know, behind the screen. But going back to the data, what about this that I like? My family, we've got a Latin leaning in my family. We can find more Spanish language shows on there than I could find anywhere else with subtitle choices, you know, so we're learning Spanish with English subtitles. I love that. Where else am I finding that? So I think they're kind of finding more and more niche audiences. They're going to find search a trouble because they've got so much stuff on there. But as they try and personalize it and surface it based on your behaviors and bring that kind of crowd mentality to try and build that water cooler moment, which doesn't exist anymore, of who's seen the latest series of, I'm going to name one, Silicon Valley's just come back, hasn't it? Seems more appropriate than ever. So I think there's many strands to that story about how they are no way complacent, no way standing on their laurels. I don't know if they'll still be around in 5 or 10 years, but it seems to me they're giving it a really good try. So maybe that's my theory on a brand that I think is doing it quite well.
Okay, great. And if time permits, Mark, we'll have one more question. We saw earlier that 2/3 of the audience surveyed were concerned about digital disruption. What are they doing about that? Do they think big enough? Do you have to hire from the outside, a partner from the outside, to think differently?
Right. I think this is huge into the area I spend most time talking about these days. So what are they doing about that? Obviously they better be doing something significant about that. Sitting around and you know, kind of crying over the inevitability of it all is definitely not the way to go, is it? So you've got to experiment your way out, and you can't spend a year or two building the giant silver bullet savior strategy. You've got to try things. You've got to think in smaller iterations. I probably said a few of these things in the presentation itself, right? You probably do need to bring in talent from outside your organization. Can you do that faster with a partner or a consultant of some description, or hiring that talent? I mean, I get that depends how deep your pockets are and what backing that the agent of change gets from the CEO. So I think I speak to other chief digital officers like myself inside a company, trying to make it go faster and trying to overcome internal politics. So there's a lot of battles. Maybe some of the audience members here are having those very same battles. I see one all the time. It's a skills gap, isn't it? Everyone, so data, we go back to data being the savior. There's data scientist is the hottest role you can have today, right? Make up the number you want to charge yourself. How many companies listening, or how many companies out there have hired data science talent, brought them in, and that talent sits around idly, really, because the data is so disorganized and siloed and unstructured that there's some data engineering work needs to happen before they can do the thing that they're good at. And maybe some companies are not mature enough in their understanding to be able to do that. So how do you like bump start that and get tools involved quickly to get that talent you've hired and make it pay off by getting it to work? And there are accelerators around that can help you do that. Yeah, but I don't know, maybe I'm rambling a little bit. Experimentation, an innovative mindset, talent from outside, challenge yourself. Financial services, spoken to a lot of kind of big banking giants lately, just having to change their spots and pay attention to the fintech ecosystem, make friends with those guys, set up hubs, and the 5 of you can come and work under a big office with us, and we'll see the one that wins this kind of Shark Tank. A lot of different ways of seeing who'll be still standing in 12 months time. I think it's encouraging that some of those big players are saying we'll never do this ourselves. We're just not built that way, but we can we can give it a good try of seeding that talent and feeding that talent with investment capital that they can put to better use than we can. So a variety of ways of doing it. Never stop looking, listening, learning. That's what we all do. That's what I do every day. It's the fun part of my job, I guess, trying to help join the dots within certain company from lessons that they're missing outside in the wider world.
All right, great. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Appreciate for everybody hanging on for some additional questions here. Again, thank you to Doug and to Mark for bringing this great topic to us today. We hope to be in touch with everybody soon. Thanks so much.
Right. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.